Welcome everyone to JCTV Spotlight on the Arts. Today is February 14th. We're coming to you from the great capital city of Missouri, Jefferson City, Missouri. And it's Valentine's Day, so welcome on a very special day to many people. I'm your host, Rick Jey, with a very special guest today. Hopefully, at some point in your place or life, you've been entertained by the well-known entertainer-musician, Hambo Latham. Join me if you can. I'd like to say that I'm truly honored to turn the spotlight on Hambo.
And thank you very much. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you, and thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. It's really a pleasure. I've been looking to this for so long. Well, my first question is, we need to hear a little bit about Mr. Hambo Latham, the highlights of your life that best describe you as Hambo.
Well, a good part of my life's been high anyway, not in that fashion, not what you're thinking, but I've had an interesting life. But Hambo Latham started on the side of a mountain in Newton County, Arkansas, very, very rural, in sight of the Buffalo River. And that's where my whole family came from. My grandparents lived, you could have thrown a rock off the porch and hit the water of the Buffalo.
Wow, what a setting I picture. That's not like a painting.
Well, it is.
Oh, wow,
it
so
is.
You have those deep roots.
Well, and yes, people who come from the mountains sometimes are different than folks in the city.
I can imagine.
Right.
Yes, I've experienced that also.
Oh, yeah.
Well, now, your name intrigues many people, Mr. Hambo. So can you kind of give us an idea of where Hambo Latham, the origin of that? I know we have a Latham, Missouri, not 5 miles from where I live in the country here in Missouri.
I've always thought they named that after me.
They could have.
I mean, I don't know that,
I mean,
but no, Hambo Latham, my grandmother named me Hambo Latham. She was born in 1890. And when she was 8 years old, they lived in Oklahoma in what was called the Indian Territory. And this guy named Hambo Latham came to town, and he'd get into the liquor and he'd have himself a good time. And one night he has too good a time and kills a guy. And they just carried him straight to the tree, hung him right there. And then my grandmother named me Hambo Latham.
I don't know where to go with that.
I don't either. Well, I didn't know where to go either.
But what has transpired, and we're going to hear more about that as we go. Now, can you share us then when or how you were first inspired to become an entertainer, and what inspires you even today to continue on this kind of a legacy that you began many years ago?
You know, when you talk about what inspires you to be an entertainer, I don't think I was inspired. I think it was something in me from day one. When I was 8 years old, I could listen to the radio stations, and I'd hear the big guys and the big ladies doing the big songs, and weather was hot, so you go dunk your head in water, and I'd stand there and watch the droplets come off of my head, and I'd think that's how many hit songs I want.
I see.
Yeah, so it was always.
So you're inspired to be an entertainer.
Yes.
And once it's in your blood, it's in your blood. It seems like so.
I can't get rid of it.
Well, that's excellent. That's great to hear, and I know you continue on. Now, can I ask you? You've collaborated with many entertainers over the past 60 years. Can you give us the names of some of those entertainers that you've shared the stage with that we could relate to as a viewer?
The first one was Claude King. He had a huge hit called Wolverton Mountain.
Oh my, yes.
I was in Wichita, Kansas, and I had a local record that was going on, but I worked for a soda pop company, worked for Coca-Cola. And so I was the original Coca-Cola cowboy, I guess.
Oh, I see, yeah.
But my record was played on a radio station. Claude King's coming to town, and he's going to be in the Cotillion Ballroom. And I'm thinking, yeah, you know, they're playing my record. His advance people heard the record on the way into town, and they said, we need this guy on the bill because he's going to sell some tickets too.
Yes.
So I became the front man for Claude King at that moment. And it was wonderful. But there was Claude King, then I had about 30 minutes with Freddie Fender, and then I had some time with Jim Ed Brown, who's a Missouri guy. Yeah. And then finally, I had a wonderful time with Carl Perkins.
Carl Perkins.
Yeah, and then I knew everybody. I really did.
And that's just a few. We'll probably talk about a few more of those.
Sure.
That I can probably recall. Louisiana Hayride, I think.
Louisiana Hayride. Elvis Presley. They wouldn't let him on the Grand Ole Opry, but they did the Louisiana Hayride.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Super. Now, is there one entertainer that's passed away or still with us today that you'd like to or wish you had collaborated with?
Well, you know, I'm stuck in a time warp, and I can't help it. That's just how I am. If there was anybody that I could sit and talk to about music and why, it'd be Elvis Presley.
Oh, yes.
Elvis Presley.
Oh, yes. He touched many of our lives. I
Yes.
have so much base also with
He was a good and decent human being.
Yes.
He was.
from the ground zero
Yes.
right on up.
Loved his mother.
Yes.
Gave a guy a black eye over her.
Well, is there a favorite show that you've done or a venue, an experience that you'd like to share with us that would inspire maybe just for a laugh or that was really meaningful to you? We've reached down really deep as I can into the heart of our guests and something that really you can relate to
Well,
in the past.
you know, my first foray into television was the Porter Wagoner Show. That was a very long time ago, before Dolly Parton was on. So a long time. Mm-hmm. And then there were others, and then I wound up with Nashville Now in its heyday. I was not a part of it, but I guested on it. But if you're talking about a favorite show, the one that really comes to mind was one in Germany that I'd done. I get there, there's only 8 people assigned. 1's sick, 2 had to go to town for supplies. It's a secret base, you know. And in the final end, there was one guy there, and when we come up, he was doing a barbecue in our honor, but he was also our only audience. And I gotta say that was the one that really stuck. Yeah, but you know what? We had such a wonderful time.
So it's not always the crowd,
No.
the number of people that come in, 1,000 people. But I always said once, you know, you can be lonely in a crowd of 1,000 people.
Let me tell you what, I hosted a show one time with 25,000 people on it, and I was never so alone in my life.
I can imagine. Yes,
That's true.
I understand that
I do.
fully. Now, you are first thought of as an entertainer, but like most people, you surely have your interests between performances. Like, can you share with us basically your interest outside performing and entertaining? I know you're happily married, not married, but maybe to be soon with your.
I have a wonderful lady in my life.
Miss Faye,
of course I
believe her name
do.
is.
Yeah, well, Hambo Latham lives with 4 dogs and a pretty good cat.
Uh-huh.
And I when you talk about interests, and I don't mean this bad, but when a person gets wrapped up in interests, well then maybe they don't have enough life going on.
There you go.
So I don't really have an interest. All I do is work. At home, sometimes at 2 o'clock in the morning, if I can't sleep, guess what?
You're in your studio, laying down some more tracks.
There you go.
You sound just like me.
Either that,
is life.
or I'm just sitting there playing an old song that I knew 500 years ago.
Well, that brings up the next question I'd like to pose to you. What type of music then do you find entertaining when you're not working? What do you listen to?
You know, this is probably really going to hurt you. I am in that time warp that I mentioned. You know, I grew up in the 50s, and I had a strong background in even 40s music. I remember very well 40s and 50s, but 50s was really where I became a part of, not just interested, but a part of. And it continued on there, but along the way, you know, you got to like Hugo Winterhalter.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
I'm glad you know who he is.
Oh, yes. Oh,
and I was a big fan, and still am, of Lawrence Welk.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm telling
Now
you.
talk about entertainment.
Yes.
A show that entertained thousands, maybe millions.
Yeah, I like, but no, I like. It's hard for me to separate music. Now, I will say there are musics that I don't understand, and if I don't understand it, it's hard for me to get into it.
Right.
Now, but you know, if I understand the music, I like it.
Now, help me recall something. There was a program coming out of Springfield, Missouri, our neighboring city, and I can't recall the name, but I do remember a young lady out of, was it Clinton, Missouri, became a star.
Are we talking about Ozark Jubilee?
Ozark Jubilee.
Ozark Jubilee.
Faithfully.
Now, I don't remember a girl from Clinton, but I do remember a young lady that became a star off of that, and her name is Brenda Lee.
That's it. That's her.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, Brenda Lee.
Brenda Lee.
Was she a queen? Oh.
Oh yes, very
Yeah.
much. Before Dolly Parton, naturally. But yes, she was. And the
She's
voice
still
that
she's still royalty today.
Yes, she
Absolutely.
sure is.
Absolutely.
Yes, but you just never got a chance to be on the
Ozark Jubilee? Well, I was only 3.
Red.
No.
Oh, it's only 3. I keep forgetting. I thought that I had remembered.
No.
Mr. Latham.
I was more than 3.
More than
But no, I was not. Now, oddly enough, I was in music at that time, but I wasn't in music in a manner that would have put me on that. Red Foley was the host of it. Yeah.
That's how I basically grew up.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a lot of hit songs. Marvin Rainwater, you know, most people might not remember him, but Marvin Rainwater had this song that I'm gonna find me a bluebird.
Yes.
And it was a huge hit. Yeah, but it spawned a lot of things. In fact, Red Foley, most people don't know it, but Pat Boone was his son-in-law.
Yes. Oh, yes. That's,
Yeah.
He married into the
Yeah.
Foleys, and yes, that was part of knowing a little bit about those people that entertained us on a Saturday night.
That's right. That's
so,
right. It was a very, very big show.
Yes.
Very big.
And I was surprised that it didn't continue on. Of course, what can you say when you come up against not the Laugh-In, but the Saturday night program that really...
Well, about the time that you think you're in good, that's when you find yourself in the unemployment line.
Oh, that's true.
And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your value is. You may not be needed, so you better be careful.
Well, Porter Wagner, was it Porter Wagner that had the Saturday night show? Not Laugh-In, but the...
No, well, he only had the Porter Wagner show. Now there were other country stars that had huge shows. Jimmy Dean actually spawned Patsy Cline. Yeah, I shouldn't say he spawned her, but she became the real Patsy Cline through Jimmy Dean.
Now that's a note. Patsy Cline, my parents taken us 3 children at the time to go see the Patsy Cline show, and also was a couple other entertainers, and that was broadcast as we was waiting for Patsy Cline in Kansas City. It was announced that she had
that was
Big Bop.
a fundraiser.
big fundraiser. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember it like
Plane
yesterday.
crash.
Plane crash.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know who one of the first people that found her was?
No.
The plane. There was people out scouring the hillsides looking for this airplane. Roger Miller.
Roger Miller
Was
Oh,
one
I
of the
did not
first to
know
find.
that. Now that's
Yeah.
some trivia. That
Yeah, it is.
I sure did not know.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, so in your field of work, especially in the country music, as we even see today, and we have there's a lot of country music followers, that it is kind of like a big family, although it's transitioned into a different beat, a different sound, which is really kind of unique even to me. Some of those hooks that I talked about earlier, you see them every program. You see an entertainer. Those hooks are there to catch you, and so it's a tight-knit program. Well, let's see. Hambo, we must take a break, so please hang with me. After the break, we learn more about one of America's well-known entertainers, Hambo Latham, as he takes us through, after the break, his pathway to becoming an entertainer, and a little bit of advice for those younger, should we say, entertainers who are dreaming of such. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. We're back with a special guest today on Spotlight on the Arts, a special feature of Mid-Missouri Art News, if you have been following us. I continue with entertainer Hambo Latham, who is here with us today to share the highlights of his life as an entertainer throughout many countries of the world. It's all here, right here on Spotlight on the Arts, a special feature of Mid-Missouri Art News. Well, Hambo, welcome back. And I guess I want to ask you up front, you've shared so much information before the break. Now I'd like to ask you a couple of questions that's come to mind, actually from some of our viewers that have asked me to approach you about. So the first one is, so many recognize that you've plucked many a guitar string and fogged up many a microphone, it sounds like, singing into over the past years, where you started with the bass many years ago and still entertain people weekly. You know, Mr. Latham comes to us from an original, from the days where you can identify, if you can, with the past USO shows, entertaining the troops in different countries, in different battles, reminding one of Bob Hope, as I recall. You know, your many friends on Facebook, Mr. Hambo, like David White and Tom Laney, who you met, I believe it was David White, back at Kusan Air Force Base in Korea, 1990, if I have my research correct.
That's about right. Yeah.
And then there's John Anderson, who you impressed in 1987 in Turkey. Tell us, can you reach deep and tell our viewers just how much it means to you as an entertainer to be recognized by those who have been able to be a part of your crowd as an entertainer?
Well, first I remember John. That was in Eskişehir, Turkey.
Eskişehir.
Yeah. And as far as my background with military, I think that my time with military, which was 38 individual tours and 13 world tours, it carried me a very long way.
Yes.
But it identified me first as a human being, and then it also further identified me as an American. It changed everything that I thought I knew. Totally everything. I was like Sergeant Schultz on Hogan's Hero. I know nothing until I ran into the military audience. It was an incredible experience. I'll take it with me when I die.
Yes, I can imagine sort of witnessed that from a viewer in the crowd, you know.
Sure.
And those entertainers just really poured out, as you've seen, because they know that people, some of them in situations that their lives are on the line the next day. So those USO shows, military bookings, were beneficial not only to the entertainer, and you can see how it draws them to their heart, but also to those that's watching and seeing this guy is really for real. Either that or he's putting on a good act. Most of the time they are for real. Well, can you briefly take us on a short tour of your career beginnings? The cities real quick, the venues.
Well,
you remember how you've adapted to all types of these venues and the music situations, and even now to have your life now with hits like If My Nose Was Running Money, cut in 2012, and it's a Saddam Shame in 2014, now playing on YouTube. Now we will have one of your special selections within the program that'll be edited in, but just take us a little tour if you can.
Well, first off, It's a Saddam Shame I wrote that song, and I wrote it in preparation of a war that I knew was coming. It would have probably been a huge hit, except the war proper only lasted about 96 hours, and then it was gone.
Yes.
And so the radio stations didn't pick up on it, but it's still out there. But my career, it actually started when a truck ran over me, really. I was 7 years old, which took me out of all of the gymnasium stuff that children might have had at that point in history. I took no PE classes, couldn't walk. I was in a body cast for a very long time, and then more so than that, I lived in the woods, you know. So here I am in the woods. My uncle brings in a guitar, puts it on my belly, and he says, "This is yours."
Oh, wow.
He knew 3 chords. He showed them to me. Not long till people from across the other ridges, some were pretty good pickers. You know, they'd come in
Yes.
and see the kid, show me a little of this and a little of that. So at 12 years old, I'm playing tent revivals with my uncle, who was, he called himself an evangelist.
Yeah.
I didn't really know him that way, but that's what he called himself.
I see.
And that's where I learned the power of a song. I really learned the power of a song, and it was like a disease, you know.
Yes.
And then from there, I take off from home when I'm 14, and I join a traveling band. Career didn't last long, so then I started plucking chickens over in Springdale, Arkansas.
Instead of guitars.
Yeah, for a little while.
Changed a lot.
Yeah, but music was never far away,
Right.
and it just kept coming back and coming back. And then at 19 years old, here comes Claude King, you know, and then from there, here comes Nashville. Here comes people who are very, very important that know who I am. I'm not sure they cared who I was, but they knew who I was, and it just became
And that's, again,
it was a passion.
the life and the definition of an entertainer
It was
even
passion.
today.
Passion.
It's all about promotion. It's all about the dollar. But you still have the passion. You never lose that passion.
Yeah.
I can recall at 5 years old, my sister's here, by the way, with us today, visiting in Jefferson City, Nancy Johnson. And Nancy and my older sister Barbara and the younger brother Russ wasn't around at that time, but down around Collins, Missouri, back in the hills where we was raised initially, Sunday after church, it was going to John Brown's house, I think it was. That's where Dad sat down and picked with him. So
Yeah.
again, you're introduced, you know, around the area. And of course, I'll never forget the porch that was slanted, and they somehow sat on that porch, picked those guitars at an angle. So
Yeah.
talk about balanced
Yes.
music and balanced musicians. It's just something.
Sure.
But now, so yes, I can identify with that. Now, you know, so many young people, we talked earlier about wanting to get in the business as an entertainer, and they think they've got to be a star and what have you. I'd like to ask you now to really reach in your heart and tell these young people your passion we see. Now, how do you instill that passion in a person that's watching today, a young person, and how would you inspire them and ask them to pursue it, hang on to it, or at least reach some level that they're happy with in their own being?
I think that the person who wants to be in entertainment, I think first you have to have the passion. And passion is, I'm not sure that that's really describable. I'm not certain that it really is, but it can consume you. You have to leave room to live, but it can consume you. And if you want to be an entertainer, I think you need to decide if you want to be a musical entertainer, if you want to be a singer, if you want to be a performer on stage. I think you have to decide at some point what kind of music do you want to play, because I know a lot of groups, when they come together and they start talking about format, they'll say, well, let's just play a little bit of all of it and then we'll make everybody happy. That is not true.
Right.
You will offend the ones who don't share that kind of music that are in your audience. You will bore the rest of them. So my advice is to pick what you want to be. And then you work really hard to be that, and you stick to it even if it's failing. You stick to it because somewhere there's somebody that likes it.
And it may be a hit at some point. So
It
you
might be.
Still pursue.
It might be.
So you say don't give up on it.
No,
Somehow
no.
you stay with it.
Well,
whether,
if it's a passion, you can't give up
Right,
on it.
yes, if it's
You can't.
a
You don't.
passion,
You're not given a choice about that.
passion is
If it's a
the key word.
passion,
If it's a
yeah.
passion, pursue it
Yeah.
at whatever level you can
Yeah.
at certain points, I guess.
When it really comes time that you have to make a choice, I chose to give it all up and let's chase this thing and spend a lifetime doing it. I have no regrets, absolutely none. And if I die tomorrow, if I can come back and do it again, I would change nothing.
Great. I love to hear that, because that's really when a person gets our age. That's when we can look back and say, I wouldn't change anything, because
That's right.
even the bumps in the road we've talked about,
That's right.
they do happen in life. And you
That's
go
correct.
on and still pursue what you love
Always,
doing.
always.
because it's a passion.
Yes.
You're maybe born with it. It's maybe a gift. Maybe it is a blessing.
It is. It's a blessing.
That, you never lose.
Yeah,
And always, if you have any faith at all, you're always guided.
Yeah, but look, a blessing could be your love of food, and that'll kill you if you're not careful.
Oh, I see.
So passions are to be consuming, but they can't totally rule you either. You have to find a balance in there, but you have to have if you're going to be something, you got to have the passion.
Well, now, with that passion, everyone has their favorite pieces of work. They call their favorites. Sometimes we have a piece of work that really surprises us and turns out really great. And we're going to have a DV with a lot of pictures of your past as you grew along the way, and even a special song that you've chosen, that you've given to me as your favorite, which will be shared so they can see your abilities and your voice, which is excellent. So can you identify and share those favorites or that favorite, and maybe why they have become a favorite or a special meaning to you?
If we're talking about a song that I wrote, which I did, I wrote a lot of songs, probably 6 million of them left under beds here, there, and yonder.
Sure, I can.
But 42 of them wound up to be licensed and published through BMI, which that's pretty important.
Yes.
Doesn't mean that they're a hit, but out of all of the songs that I wrote, there is none of them that was about me that I thought was very good, because you get to the place where you're talking too much about yourself, and if you think the audience doesn't catch that, you're wrong. Yeah.
They pick up on it really fast.
And one of the songs that was the kindest to me was a song called Fancy Flossie.
Fancy Flossie.
And it was about a lady that was considerably overweight that was a dancer in a circus. And it was the biggest selling song in the publishing company that had it. And every once in a while, somebody still says, Fancy Flossie.
Fancy Flossie.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting close on time now, Hambo. Do you have any projects right now or venues you're working at or entertaining at that you can give our viewers, that you'd like to share with the viewers real?
Well, I'm a little more settled now in my life than I have been as far as entertainment is concerned. And I'm a mid-Missouri entertainer. I think that's a fair description of what I do. I work about 20 times a month on the average, and I'm readily accessible without saying exactly where I'm at. I'm just a mid-Missouri guy. And if you want to know about me, friend me on Facebook.
On Facebook,
yeah.
Under
Hambo Latham.
Hambo Latham.
Hambo Latham at Facebook. Yeah, friend me, and you'll find all sorts of things going on. And if that won't work for you, well then Hambo Latham at Yahoo works pretty good. Send me an email.
Okay, good.
And if you got, I'll do about anything except financing. I can't get into that. I don't have enough cash for that.
Well, it's been a really inspiring time, even for me to I want to thank you for sharing your life experience with me and the viewers. I really appreciate it. Spotlight on the Arts does try to reach in and associate with people that have a foundation, or even beginners that are inspired by others. So it's been a great experience to visit with you.
Well, thank you so much. And you know what? I just hope that people will become more acquainted with this little program that's kind of happening on this hilltop out here by Lincoln, because it's very impressive. When I came in and seen your area that you work in, well, I'm taken back by that. I've seen a couple. This is very good, and it's a great program, and I hope that people will continue to watch it and expand some. Look some of the other stuff over that Spotlight does. Of course.
Well, thank you again, Hambo. I really appreciate it. Well, next here on Spotlight on the Arts, I'll be interviewing an artist from St. Louis, Missouri, Jerry Thomas. That interview is scheduled for March 14th. And my next guest on Mid-Missouri Art News are artists Larry Carver of Jefferson City, Missouri, and Jim Peters of Washington, Missouri. That program is scheduled for taping on March 7th. It takes a while to get them edited and up to YouTube and on the air, but bear with us and enjoy the other programs that we've provided here at JCTV. I just thank so much to our JCTV producer, Glory Enlow, and the camera crew. And thank you, our viewers, for joining us. Look for more Spotlight on the Arts right here on JCTV. Don't forget YouTube. I'm Rick Jey saying, see you next time. Thank you so much for being with us.